So, hello everybody and welcome. Yes, welcome back here at BSN Network. Here we go back here, BSN Network. This is the BSN Network podcast here today. It is Wednesday, February 23rd. Hopefully everybody's having a day so far and a good rest of their day yesterday. It is, in fact, Wednesday, February 23rd here today. Hopefully everybody's having a good day so far and had a good rest of their day yesterday. It is, in fact, Wednesday, February 23rd, as we get closer and closer to March, which means hopefully closer and closer to baseball and spring training. Yet again, not much progress being made. There was a little bit yesterday, but nothing to the extent that us as baseball fans should really get excited about, or really get to the point of there's going to be spring training, and spring training is going to start on time, and there's going to be a baseball season that's going to start on time. Still so many things up in the air, still so many issues that need to be covered and addressed, and both sides still a ways away. And it really seems as if at this point, in these next 2 to 3 days that they got, they're going to need to cover a lot of ground. And I really believe if we want to start the season on time for baseball, it's going to have to come down to one side saying, you know what, look, we'll accept it. We'll do this. If you do this and all that, and it's going to come down to one side's going to have to give in. Because right now, both sides are kind of giving in a little bit, but not to the extent where they can get a deal done within the next 2 days and by February 28th, which is the absolute deadline, unless if the season is going to get delayed. So the more and more it's looking like, the more and more we talk about this, the more and more it's looking like that there's going to be a delay to the season, and that's not a good thing. So I'm hopeful I'm wrong. I'm hopefully this thing gets turned around. But it's not looking good. So, as for last night in the world of sports, there was a couple good games on last night. Islanders were able to get the win against the Kraken, 5-2. So Islanders get back on track with a win last night, a much needed win, right? And you look at their schedule right now, and you saw that game against the Canadiens, which they lost, and that was completely unacceptable. And then now you look at the game last night against the Kraken. I don't know why I couldn't think of the Kraken there, but the Kraken, and they get the win. So, good, solid win for the Islanders last night. Look, like I said, the Islanders are in a position right now where they're struggling. They're not a playoff team. They're not anywhere close to the playoffs right now. They still got some games in hand, but, if they could just find ways to win and maybe make things a little bit interesting in terms of them bumping up a little bit in the standings, they're right now right out of the wild, right out of the spot, but it doesn't seem as if anything wild's going to change. So, but they do get the win last night, and you got to give credit where credit's due. They got to win, and that's all that matters. They get the win, and so they have a night off tonight. They will be back in action on tomorrow against the Sharks, so they'll continue their West Coast trip tomorrow. And as a Ranger fan, it feels like forever. I don't know why. It feels like forever since the Rangers played. They played on Sunday against the Senators in Ottawa. And I don't know why. I feel like this 3-day stretch of no hockey between Monday through Wednesday to today has felt longer than the 2 weeks off. I don't know why it is. I don't know if it's because other hockey's on. So it's like I've been watching other hockey that's not the Rangers. So Rangers will be back in action tomorrow night, which I'm super psyched for. Big game coming out of this little 3-day break against the Capitals at the Garden. So Rangers will be back in action tomorrow. Islanders will be back in action tomorrow. Nets will be back in action tomorrow. And the Knicks will be back in action on Friday. So Knicks back in action Friday. Nets in action tomorrow. Rangers also tomorrow, and the Islanders tomorrow. So tonight, not a crazy night in terms of New York sports. Kentucky is on tonight. So looking forward to that big game at home at Rupp Arena against LSU. So yet again, another opportunity for Kentucky. Get a win. You continue to build that, you continue to build wins and get wins, and then you meet Arkansas away on the road in Arkansas this Saturday with a big matchup, not just for the top 25 in March Madness, but in terms of SEC play and where they're going to be standing, coming up. There's 5 games left in the regular season. Big games coming up tonight, big game on Saturday in terms of SEC play and where they could be placed come tournament time in the SEC. So Kentucky on tonight. Other than that, no Islanders, no Nets, no Knicks, no Rangers, no Islanders, like I said. Rangers, Islanders, Nets all back in action tomorrow. Knicks will resume their season after the All-Star break on Friday at home against the Heat. Alrighty, so let's get to the topics for today. As you all know, due to scheduling, I will only be doing a half an hour podcast today, so only about a 25 to 30 minute video. Got a really exciting and a really positive topic to talk about. Really, a happy one. A really a well-earned, deserved honor for Paul O'Neill, and I'm going to get to that, here shortly. Paul O'Neill jersey retirement. So, Paul O'Neill was announced yesterday that Paul O'Neill will be getting his number retired by the New York Yankees on August 21st. Hopefully, there is baseball on August 21st. When I saw this happen, I was super excited for him. A guy who played so much, played through a lot of injuries, was, kind of one of the under-the-radar players. When you look at Yankees history, you think of you think of the DiMaggios and the Mantles and the Whitey Fords and, the Babe Ruths and the Jeters, and rightfully so, those are your core guys. But you get down, you get to the bottom, or, kind of the lower part of the list, and you think of guys like Thurman Munson's and, the Don Mattingly's and, you get down to, like I said, the Posadas and then Paul O'Neill's and those type of guys that made huge impacts. Maybe not as recognized as some of those other big name players, but a guy in Paul O'Neill who you talk about playing hard every single game. You talk about putting it all out there. Paul O'Neill did that every single night that he played for the New York Yankees. And even in his time with the Reds to start his career, that's why they called him a warrior. A guy who played through a lot. If he was injured, he played through it. Did not miss many games. Played a ton of games in his career. He averaged about 130 something games played a year. So for now modern day sports where guys are taking days off here and there, a guy who very rarely took a day off in Paul O'Neill. So gets his jersey retired August 21st. I'll talk about him and get into all of that great stuff with him, and he will join some legendary Yankees there in Monument Park in deep center field. And New York sports update as well I'll get to. Like I said, not much going on tonight in the world of New York sports, although Kentucky basketball's on tonight at home against LSU starting 9 Eastern on ESPN, shortly after Duke, Virginia, which is a very interesting game. Virginia beat Duke the last time at Cameron Indoor. Now Virginia's home. I believe Virginia's only 4.5-point dog. So the spread and what people are saying is that it's going to be a pretty good game. So I'm pretty excited to see how that has the possibility and the chance of playing out, because you see a Virginia team, a good, feisty, young team, going up against a Duke team that's also young. We all know, right? A Duke team that's got, Coach K probably making his final visit to Virginia. So definitely a game there to watch out for. On paper, it might not look great, but in terms of what it could mean, in terms of how it already played out this season, definitely something to watch out for as Virginia now gets Duke at home. Beating them on the road's hard. That's really hard. Going to Cameron Indoor and beating Duke, I don't care how bad or good Duke is, it's hard. So, top 4 team in the nation, Duke, heads into Virginia. And, so that's what I got for the introduction. And now a lot to get to here in a short 30 minutes. Got the Paul O'Neill jersey retirement, which got a lot to get to on that. So this is the BSN podcast, and let's get right into it. Alrighty, so Paul O'Neill's number 21 jersey to be retired by Yankees on August 21st. So I know this announcement was made yesterday. It was actually made shortly before I recorded a podcast. So I was going to talk about it yesterday, but I already had the Nets signing Goran Dragic and Juwan Howard, and I figured, you know what, I'll talk about this tomorrow. So I figured today's only going to be a 25 to 30 minute video. It's going to be a little bit of a shorter one than the usual 40 to 50 minute videos. And I wanted to talk about this. Paul O'Neill, Yankees will add yet again another number to Monument Park. This time it's going to be number 21 that's going to be added to Monument Park right behind the center field wall. And well-deserved. I mean, well-deserved. And hopefully, like I said, I don't mean to say this jokingly, but it's the truth. I mean, I hope that there's baseball on time. I want baseball on time. But hopefully there is going to be baseball, and hopefully on August 21st, the Yankees will be playing, and there's going to be fans in the stands, and hopefully the Yankees are having a good season up to that point, and Paul O'Neill and his family and the Yankees and the fan base can truly give him the respect he deserves. And like I said, I kind of to backtrack on what I said earlier, right? There's always those athletes that we all always recognize in sports. There's always those athletes that might not be those flashy players of greatness where they every single night They're putting up big numbers, and in any sport it is, whether it's basketball, where you got, the LeBron Jameses of the world, and, Michael Jordan, and the top, obviously, the Kareems, the Kobes, the Wilts, the Larry Birds, all those guys that will go down in history as some of the greatest, because they were great, obviously. But there's also those guys that kind of fly under the radar as really good players that may not get as much respect, might not get as enough attention, because they might not be that insane statistical player that was putting up big-time numbers every night, every season, was cranking in 45 home runs. It wasn't like he hit 762 home runs like Barry Bonds did. Paul O'Neill, though, is one of those guys that doesn't always get as much attention as we all would expect for what he did for the Yankees and even his short time to begin his career with the Cincinnati Reds. But what he did was great. And what he did was almost the equivalent to what some of the greater ones have done in terms of his love for the game. Going out there every single night, no matter what the circumstances was, whether he was injured, whether it was a stretch where, I don't know, like he barely took days off. He played through injuries. He played through tough stretches in his career. Sometimes coaches will give guys days off, and I know it's a different sport. The 90s to now the 2022, it's different, right? When guys are slumping, the whole technology, all that has advanced. Some of the guys, when they're slumping, they'll get days off. I understand that the sports in general are different from when Paul O'Neill played in the 90s, and into the early 2000s. I believe he retired, to early 2001 or something like that, I think he retired in. So the game has definitely changed. But in a night in and night out basis, no matter what was going to be the case, Paul O'Neill was going to give it his all. Even if the Yankees could have lost by a lot, the Yankees could have won by a lot, it could have been a close game, no matter what, Paul O'Neill was going to go out there and give it his all. He was going to fight through injuries. He was going to battle through slumps. Tough stretches for himself, like I said, he's going to play through that. And that's something why he was so respected by his teammates, and that's why he was so respected by the Yankees. And I know that his temper was definitely interesting, and you kind of look back on it, even him, when he does the games and stuff, he always talks about how his temper was definitely wild, and every time Paul O'Neill played, which was most of the time, the Gatorade coolers were always on life support, because every time he played, you could almost guarantee, like if there was a 3-game series, you could almost guarantee at least twice during that 3-game series, a Gatorade cooler was going to get destroyed. And that was just his passion for the game. That was just how he was. Like, if he was going through a tough stretch, he was frustrated. He showed his emotions. He wanted to win. He loved winning. He played the game to win. And that's why he's so respected by a fan base. He wasn't, he wasn't all worried about himself. He wasn't worried about his personal accolades, his personal statistics. He was out there to win. He was out there to help his team. And when he wasn't helping his team, and when the team wasn't winning, he was destroying Gatorade coolers. He was getting frustrated. And that's the kind of player that deserves to be, in Monument Park. And that's the type of players that we've already seen go into Monument Park. The all-time Yankee greats that have done so much to the organization. That no matter, they weren't selfish. They were out there for the team. And also, some of them were just so good no matter what kind of success they had. They were so good. And now he will be joined by many others. Whitey Ford, Jeter, Mo, Andy Pettitte, some of the recenter ones that I've just mentioned. Like I said, Whitey Ford's not as recent, but, talk about some of the more recent players. Like I said, Mo, Pettitte, Jeter. He'll join Posada, he'll join, Reggie Jackson, Thurman Munson, Billy Martin. I'm just thinking of guys off the top of my head. Mickey Mantle, Joe DiMaggio, Babe Ruth. He'll join many of them. Bernie Williams, Yogi Berra, Bill Dickey, Phil Rizzuto. He joins all of them. And what you see now in center field is a collection of all-time Yankee greats, like I've already mentioned. Don Mattingly, Elson Howard. Now you join in, Paul O'Neill, and you already, like I said, add that to Lou Gehrig and DiMaggio and Mo and all those guys. I know I might have repeated myself, but just putting the point across of how good all those players were. Roger Maris, Bill Dickey, Billy Martin. He joins all those players now. And definitely well-deserved for Paul O'Neill. A guy who every single night put it all out there, loved the game, loved to win and wanted to win. And I've always said this in sports, like sometimes those are the type of athletes that don't get all the attention. And those are sometimes the guys that fly under the radar. Because they're not the guys that are, and he was very good, don't get me wrong, like even if you look at his stats, he was a career, in his career, he was really solid. I mean, a guy who stayed healthy, was out there a lot, played the majority of the games, never had an issue in terms of like injuries and sitting out and having long period of times on the IL, or at the time it was, the DL, because now it's the IL, only changed a couple years ago. So, for a guy like Paul O'Neill to get respected like this and get honored into Monument Park's great. And sure, maybe he's not in Cooperstown. Maybe he won't be in Cooperstown. Okay. Cooperstown is for the all-time greats. Is Paul O'Neill an all-time great when you line him up against some of the greatest, guys like Babe Ruth and, the greatest, Gehrig's, the DiMaggio's, even some of the Yankees great. No, he's not in that category. But when you line him up against some of the toughest, some of the guys that just love the sport, some of the guys that, wore the pinstripes with pride, that's what Monument Park means. Monument Park means you wore the pinstripes with pride. You represented what it was like to be a Yankee. You had class. You had pride. You gave it your all every night. You were all about winning. You did anything to help the team. You were, you weren't selfish. You weren't worried about yourself. Paul O'Neill checks all those boxes. That's what it's like to be a Yankee, and that is why Paul O'Neill is going to be retired, and his jersey will be number 21. He will have his own plaque in center field behind the center field wall in Monument Park for pretty much for the rest of time. Paul O'Neill will be forever engraved in Yankees history. So I actually have a list here. And I was reading off the top of my head earlier because I read the list before my podcast and I try to remember as much as I can. But if I missed a couple names, these are all the retired numbers for the Yankees. So he joins Billy Martin, Derek Jeter, Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig, Joe DiMaggio, Joe Torre, Mickey Mantle, Yogi Berra, Bill Dickey, Roger Maris, Phil Rizzuto, Thurman Munson, Whitey Ford, Jorge Posada. Like I said, Paul O'Neill just included now. August 21st will be the retirement. Don Mattingly, Elston Howard, Casey Stengel, Mariano Rivera, Reggie Jackson, Andy Pettitte, Ron Guidry, and Bernie Williams. So I went in number order. I didn't go in order by skill or whatever. I went in number order, starting with number 1, Billy Martin, and ending with 51. Bernie Williams, and obviously now Paul O'Neill, 21. Will be now in Monument Park as well. And I just want to say something first. I've been a Yankee fan my whole life. Now, Paul O'Neill, a lot of these guys were all before my time. I did see Jeter. I was able to see Pettitte. I was able to see Posada. Who else on here? That was pretty much it. I was only able to see Mariano. I was able to see Mariano Rivera. I saw Jeter and Mariano Rivera's last couple games. I saw their seasons and stuff. I saw Pettitte, all that. I've only seen the recent guys. I'm not, I don't date back to the 90s or the days of, Paul O'Neill. I sometimes wish I did because those are really the glory days. Like the 90s have so much rich history. Even Jeter coming up at that time, Mariano Rivera starting at that time. You had guys like, Bernie Williams, and you even now Paul O'Neill. Those teams were so good, had so much talent. There's some guys on those teams that aren't even in Monument Park that have made huge impacts, and they're not even in Monument Park. So those 90s teams were great, and that's what Paul O'Neill is all a part of, and he's 5-time champion. I just want to say this first. Like I've said, I've been a Yankee fan my whole life, and I know that all teams do it themselves. Like the Jets and the Giants have their Ring of Honor, and there's some people, and I don't know why people are saying this, and it's not coming from Yankees fans. It's coming from a lot of other fans. It's not coming from like rivals. It's just coming from baseball fans in general. And I've heard this a lot, like, the Yankees are retiring too many numbers. That, to me, is one of the dumbest takes ever. Because this isn't Cooperstown. This isn't Hall of Fame. Like, this is for the team to honor players that gave it their all for the organization. And some people that say, Paul O'Neill wasn't good enough. Okay, Paul O'Neill might not be good enough for Cooperstown. Because Cooperstown, Baseball Hall of Fame, that's another level of players. And we all know that. This is what it means to be Yankees. This is what it means to, give to the organization. Give so much to the organization. Have success with the organization. Maybe as a whole, you might not be as great as some of the others. But in terms of what you did for the organization, that gives you that's why you're in Monument Park. So and what annoys me is the fact that people are like, oh, too many numbers and stuff. And I've heard some people joking around that the Yankees are going to run out of numbers, and I actually find that funny because it's the truth. They have retired a lot of numbers, but saying, oh, they retired too many numbers or this and that, or oh, it's almost like any guy who comes through, like, that's simply not true. The Yankees are one of the richest. They have 27 championships, 27. And I know this past decade has been tough. I get that. Believe me, I've lived through it. This has been really the main decade of Yankees baseball I've watched. I've seen highlights of the 90s and previous. I've actually sat and watched Don Larson's perfect game in the World Series that was thrown to Yogi Berra. I believe I did that during COVID because they had all the replays on. It was one of the nights, and I was interested. I love Yankees history. It's awesome. I've read multiple books on it. Yankees history is so rich. So the reason why there's so many numbers is because it's such a rich history. They've won 27 championships. There's been all-time greats that have walked in and out of Yankee Stadium, ranging from Babe Ruth all the way to recently with Derek Jeters and the Marianos and now Paul O'Neill being inducted, to even the modern days players like Aaron Judge. And I'm not saying he's going to get retired. I mean, hopefully one day he is. But even to the modern players now, like Judges of the world and guys who, I'm not saying Judge is going to, like I said, we still got to see what Judge does in free agency, but hopefully one day we see number 99 out there. So that's what I'm talking about. Like they just annoys me when people are like, oh, they're retiring too many numbers, or Paul O'Neill doesn't deserve it. What about Paul O'Neill doesn't deserve it? He helped you win 5 championships. He was tough. He was gritty. He was great on defense. He was a solid hitter. He loved the game. He wanted to win, and he poured everything out there. And he was a guy who was available pretty much every night. Very rarely did Paul O'Neill miss a game. He played through injuries. He was tough. He was the Warrior. That's why they call him the Warrior. They call him the Warrior for a reason. So well-deserved for Paul O'Neill. And the reason the Yankees have so many numbers is, I'm tired talking to Yankee fans right now, and I'm telling you guys this. You guys don't need to be told this, but just for the other people out there that think that some of these guys don't deserve it, Yankees have one of the richest sports history, 27 championships. So many all-time greats have been a part of this team. And now Paul O'Neill will be another one to enter in Monument Park. Some of those fans are saying that just jealous because they might have 3 numbers retired. They might only have 3. And you even compare like the Yankees, and I'm not trying to make fun of the Mets, but to the Mets. The Mets don't have as many retired numbers. I know they're going to give Keith Hernandez his in this season as well, but that's because their history is not nearly as rich as the Yankees. I mean, even recently. They don't have the Derek Jeters of the world. They don't have the Marianos. I mean, Mariano Rivera is the best closer of all time. Derek Jeter, best, one of the better shortstops of all time. One of the better Yankees of all time. Like I said, Mariano Rivera is the best closer of all time, only unanimous to make the Hall of Fame. So, another plaque added to Monument Park, and it's just another representation of how rich and how many good players have walked in and out of Yankee Stadium for the New York Yankees. So Paul O'Neill's number 21 jersey to be retired by Yankees on August 21st. Paul O'Neill will become the 21st player in New York Yankees history to have his jersey retired. The Yankees announced they will add O'Neill's number 21 jersey to their collection in Monument Park in a ceremony before the August 21st game against the Toronto Blue Jays. O'Neill was originally drafted in the 4th round by the Cincinnati Reds in 1981. The Ohio native spent the first 8 years of his MLB career with the Reds from 1985 to 92. He was a part of the 1990 squad that swept the A's in the World Series. It was named National League All-Star Team in 1991. The Yankees acquired O'Neill from the Reds in a trade for outfielder Roberto Kelly before the 93 season. He was named to AL All-Star Team and finished in the top 15 of AL MVP voting 4 times in 5 seasons from 94 to 98. During his 8 seasons in New York, O'Neill posted a 303, 377, 492 slash line. Very, very good. With 185 home runs and 858 RBIs and 1,254 regular season games. In 76 playoff games for the Yankees, O'Neill hit 282, 355, 459, was clutch in the playoffs, was very good, and was always available. With 10 homers, 34 RBIs, 32 walks, and 38 strikeouts. He went 2 for 3 with a double in New York's 3-2 loss to the Arizona Diamondbacks in Game 7 of the 2001 World Series in what turned out to be his final game. O'Neill will become the 7th member of the Yankees teams that won 4 World Series titles in 5 years, from 96 to 2000, to have his jersey number retired by the team. Derek Jeter, Joe Torre, Jorge Posada, Mariano Rivera, Andy Pettitte, and Bernie Williams have already been honored by the organization. So those were the 90s teams that were great. And those were the 90s teams that have had a lot of legends. So he joins now, like I said, joins Billy Martin, Derek Jeter, Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig, Joe DiMaggio, Joe Torre, Mickey Mantle, Yogi Berra, Bill Dickey, Roger Maris, Phil Rizzuto, Thurman Munson, Whitey Ford, Jorge Posada, Don Mattingly, Elston Howard, Casey Stengel, Mariano Rivera, Reggie Jackson, Andy Pettitte, Ron Guidry, and Bernie Williams in Monument Park. So congratulations to Paul O'Neill, and hopefully baseball's going then, and looking forward to the ceremony August 21st before their game against the Blue Jays. And and I guess you could say who's going to be next. I don't even know. I mean, you could definitely say CeCe. I definitely think CeCe's deserving. I've loved CeCe. He's one of my favorite Yankees of all time. CeCe's awesome. I would love to see him in there. I think they're probably going to do CeCe, and probably not. Definitely not this year. I don't know when. I mean, CeCe, just retired. So it takes a couple years. I mean, Paul O'Neill retired in the early 2000s, and now he's just getting his jersey number retired. So, I mean, Jeter retired, 2013, 2014, somewhere around there, and he got his jersey retired just a couple years ago. So, it sometimes takes time. And a lot of Yankee fans have wanted Paul O'Neill to be retired for a long time. So, you get your wish, and well-deserved. Alrighty, so now let's get to the New York Sports Update and finish off the podcast here today. Like I said, got some college basketball and hockey. Tomorrow night, the NBA Final returns from the All-Star break. And tonight, in the world of the NHL, we got the Avalanche and Red Wings. I'll give Avalanche the win. Stars, Jets, I'll take the Stars. Lightning, Oilers, I'll take the Lightning. Sabres, Canadiens, I'll take the Canadiens. And Kings, Coyotes, I will take the Kings. Got a good amount of top 25 college basketball games on tonight. By the way, the Duke-Virginia game, the spread has went from 4.5 to 5.5. So I'll give Duke the win, but I think it's going to be close. I think Virginia's going to, create a run for them, bring them, it's definitely going to be a close game. And I don't believe that Duke's going to come out of there easy. I think it's going to be a hostile environment. Duke's coming into town. Anytime Duke comes in town, I don't care how good or bad your team is. Anytime Duke comes in, there's going to be a loud environment. I'll take Duke, but I think it's going to be relatively close. Texas, TCU, I'll take Texas. Providence, Xavier, I'll take Providence. Houston, Tulane, give me Houston. Auburn, Ole Miss, I'll take Auburn. And Wisconsin, Minnesota, I'll take Wisconsin. Kentucky's also back in action tonight, fresh off of their comeback win against Alabama on Saturday. Kentucky comes into this game 6th ranked team in the nation at 22-5. LSU comes into this game 19-8. Kentucky going for the series split this season. They lost earlier in the year in Baton Rouge against LSU on the road. So they're back home at Rupp Arena in Lexington. Kentucky's 8-point favorites. The over-under is set at 143. This game's on tonight, 9 p.m. Eastern on ESPN. And how many people think who will win the game? The percentage is not out yet on Bleacher Report. So I'm sure that will update in a couple hours. I do think Kentucky gets the win. I think what's different from Kentucky playing now, I think it's a better Kentucky team now. We'll see what happens with Wheeler and Washington than what we saw in Baton Rouge. And also, you're at home. LSU, hostile environment, tough place to play. It was earlier in the season. Much better Kentucky team now at home. Has not 16-0 this season at home. Have not lost at home. And we saw how they came back against Alabama without Wheeler and without Washington. So we'll see if Wheeler and Washington can play tonight, and we'll see how this Kentucky team could do. So give me Kentucky. Big back-to-back SEC games. You got LSU tonight at home, and then you got to head on the road this weekend against Arkansas. And yet again, you can't get called looking ahead here. Because if you get called looking ahead, then that makes that Arkansas game that much bigger in terms of possibility of losing spots. So right now, Kentucky's 11-3 in conference. Arkansas is 10-4. So if Kentucky were to lose tonight, they moved to 11-4. That would make that game against Arkansas really, really risky. So Kentucky still has a chance to win the SEC and get to the 1 seed in the tournament. They need some help from Auburn, which they've gone so far. But really, really hoping that Kentucky get the win tonight. You get the win tonight. It's still a big game against Arkansas, but you have more breathing room for yourself going into that game. And this is the remaining schedule. Home tonight against LSU, away against Arkansas, home against Ole Miss, and away against Florida. So that's your remaining schedule, and then SEC tournament time, and then March Madness time. So that's what's on tap for the Yankees. I apologize. I said the Yankees because I was looking at my sheet here that said the Yankees. That's what's on tap for Kentucky. I'm hopeful that I'm hopeful this time next week. I shouldn't say I'm hopeful. I don't know if hopeful is the right word, but I'm hoping, I should say, because hopeful really means that you're optimistic that a deal is going to get done. I'm hoping that this is going to be, this time next week, we're going to be talking some Yankees and some Mets as well, because I gear it around New York sports. Yankees and Mets spring training, and MLB spring training in general. That's my hope. I'm not optimistic, but that's my hope, and I think most baseball fans in general can just agree. Just get a deal done. Get the players to spring training, whether it's in Tampa or whether it's in Florida. Yankees are in Tampa. Whether it's in Florida or Arizona, and let's get this season going already. March 31st. It's almost March. You don't get a deal done in a couple days, season's going to be delayed, and I've said it for the longest time, baseball is going to put themselves in a really bad situation. So we'll see how that all plays out. By the way, I don't think I've mentioned it yet. I've actually started a Bubs Talking Baseball podcast on Apple Podcast. So it's my new podcast I just started this year. I was super excited to start it, and I started it this past Sunday. So it's going to be every Sunday. If the season gets played, I'm going to do recap, scores, highlights, give you the, up-to-date information and, recap the past week and, preview the upcoming week. I did the 4 base thing I decided to do, create a little bit of a unique spin on the podcast. First base is Yankees, second base will be Mets, third base will be American League and National League, recaps and previews, and home plate is going to be my home plate Grand Slam topic, which is going to be one bold prediction for the week. So I began that on Sunday. I talked about the lockout and Aaron Judge. It's only on Apple Podcasts, so it's only audio. I did my introduction on Sunday and Aaron Judge and some Yankee stuff as well. And this weekend I was going to do another one. With the lockout and stuff like that, I figured there's still a lot of stuff to talk about in terms of Paul O'Neill and all that. So I figured I'm going to do another one. But it's every Sunday, and I've already uploaded 2 videos on there, the introduction and then the most recent one on Sunday. So if you want to check that out, you can. It's on Apple Podcasts. I'd appreciate the support, but if you want to check it out, you can. If you don't, you don't have to either. I'm not a big fan when people push for subscribers or ask people to do this or that. If you're interested, you're interested. If you're not, you're not. And, if you are interested, I hope you enjoy it. I'm pretty excited to get it going, and I'm hopeful that I get some baseball to talk about throughout the year. So that's my new little update in terms of baseball and podcast. So that'll do it for the podcast today. Tomorrow I'll be back to another 2-topic, 40 to 50 minute one. Today was a little shorter. Tomorrow, a lot of stuff going on. I mean, there's a ton of sports going on. Ton. I got to figure out what I want to talk about. There's so much going on, and then plus with the Nets and the Rangers and the Islanders, if anything crazy happens with them, trade deadline's coming soon. If baseball gets up, there's a lot of sports going on right now. News came out today about Kemba Walker, so a lot going on. I'll figure out what I'm going to talk about. Got a lot of topics to choose from. It's overwhelming, but I always say it's a good problem to have. I'd rather have that problem than not have any topics at all. So that's what's on tap for tomorrow and the rest of the week, and that will do it. As always, I will see you all back here tomorrow. Hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for watching.